Welcome to the Enneagram with Chelsea and Nicole. This is a positively deviant culture podcast anchored in the Enneagram. In this episode, we're continuing our conversation on the type 8 and adding in some complexity and dimension as we think about what happens for the type 8 in stress and flourishing. Before we jump in, just a quick reminder.
Every episode, I want to remind listeners that this isn't a prescriptive, fixed tool and that our conversations are designed to work with the material and the ideas in an exploratory way. And as long as I've been working with the Enneagram, my knowledge and application continues to evolve. And that's what we're here to do, to learn together.
A couple of the things that we're bringing to this conversation that are a little bit different and a little bit more unique than what people's experience or exposure to the Enneagram might be are the movement points, which are both integrating and disintegrating. We value and prioritize over the wings. And then the other one is that the movement points are not one directional, meaning when you're killing it, you don't just take on the best of one other type. And when you're missing the mark, you don't just take on the worst of one other type. We actually teach it both ways.
Yeah, so typically it's taught that eights integrate to type 2 and disintegrate to type 5. And we're here to teach it that it's both. We integrate and disintegrate to both 2 and 5.
Just as a caveat here before we jump in, we intentionally use extreme language and really dig into the very, very best and the very, very worst, not the average states of these two other types. So that's just a precursor for the intensity that you can expect as we move forward and expressing what it could look like.
Fives at their worst can be incredibly disconnected from their own humanity, which makes it very easy for fives to be insensitive, careless, and angry at humans and angry at the world in a way where they have no ability to have empathy or sympathy and no regard for humanity or for human needs. And so the decisions that fives can make at their worst are very mechanical and automated and disconnected to their own heart and the elements of relationship and humanity. And also, fives at their worst can be incredibly dismissive and see everyone as stupid and can be stingy with their resources and stingy with their time. Very concerned only about accelerating and investing in their own knowledge, their own projects, and their own mental space.
I'm interested in how this shows up in eights, and I'm questioning if this kind of lack of perceived vulnerability is an eight going to this five space.
It absolutely is. Like when eights disintegrate to fives, it's very calloused. It's very machine like. It's the places where we can notice this Teflon quality where nothing sticks because there's nothing human for it to stick to. It's very armored in a way, like an alien.
So now the very best of five. Let's go there.
They teach us about omniscience. Fives are able to learn and develop mastery in ways that are absolutely uncommon and atypical. As a matter of fact, they teach the rest of us what mastery actually is. And they're able to engage the matrix of the universe and deconstruct and disassemble things and put it back together better than it was before. So their ability to understand the parts and the whole simultaneously, the ability to make connections where there are seemingly none, their ability to work with disparities and contradiction and information and data in ways that are highly complex and sophisticated, right? So this is all the brilliance of fives in terms of the deep intelligence and the deep mastery that is available to humans.
We've talked about fives in previous episodes and their ability to go on deep dives and how their integration to eight actually can bring them back out of that. And so that they don't go so deep. But for eights going to fives, it's really interesting. I have watched eights master completely different domains with such deep expertise. And I always at first glance thought, oh, that's their balance, that's their hobby. And understanding that they're actually integrating in growth explains, I think, from a deeper place how that mastery is occurring.
Yeah, eights by nature are not very disciplined inside a moment of intensity, inside the moment of, like we said, war or challenge or an obstacle. So, outside of these moments where we're needed and it's obvious and it's necessary, we're generally not very disciplined or even that interested. And so, moving to five actually instigates eight's curiosity. And honestly, the five in us for everyone is the place of curiosity and investigation. But of course, for an eight, this is really important in terms of the ability to dig into details, not natural for eights at all. Like we're very big picture and strategic in terms of sequencing. And when we're integrated to five, our five self, we can be far better in those moments that are critical, that are less noticeable. And usually those are in the details and in the complexities of whatever situation or context that are available. So that is all five intelligence in terms of digging into particulars and mastery and skills that are less obvious. And then also the ability to integrate all of that.
To put all those pieces together. This is why the movement points and these integration points are so important to understand what type you are fully, understanding where these other very opposing forces come from. But it's also a map for growth. And so we always talk about how complementary, in this case, the fives skills and intelligence are to exactly what the eights need to bring their job to life.
Yeah, fives are gifted with enormous amount of focus. And if you're going to overcome something very difficult, there needs to be a amount of focus. Eights are gifted with energy, so our energy can keep us in there. But if we are losing mental focus and clarity, that can bring us out and cause us to be unsuccessful. So what the five provides for an eight is a different kind of strength, which is the strength of mind and a very particular kind of intelligence that connected with the strength of energy that eights have and our bodily strength and our instinctual strength and our environmental strength. You combine that with intelligence and the particular discipline and mastery. Well, now you have compounded your strength and your ability to overcome, your ability to engage in very powerful, winning ways.
And there's a responsibility too, because if you have that much energy and fire towards a particular area, it's really a good idea to be well informed on that topic
That's right.
and to do your
Yeah.
due diligence so you can bring the right kinds of contribution.
Yes, eights are very impatient and fives are not. Fives have enormous amount of patience in order to develop a skill and mastery, and they have focus, which is also a form of patience, where they're able to stick somewhere for long enough in order to become skillful and to have mastery. And eights are not patient creatures at all. We are very immediate and impatient. And so that is a huge resource that we have when we actually integrate to our five self.
Now let's talk about the movement to type 2 in both the worst and the best case scenarios.
Twos at their worst are overly sensitive to rejection and can experience things as rejection and can see themselves as less important. And twos at their worst can desire to be the most important person in the room, and at their worst can be overly seductive and trying to win a scenario in a way that gets their needs met, but they're not connected to the fact that they're trying to get their needs met. The worst of a two can be highly manipulative and can be very selfish in less obvious ways, and can also focus on their own priority compared to everyone else. And this definitely shows up in eights in ways that are not obvious because they're more internal, but very, very interesting in how eights disintegrate to type two.
What about pride? Is there an element of pride that's coming from a disintegration into 2 that shows up in the 8 in an externalized way?
Yes, I'm glad you used a different word. Twos want to be the most important person in the room. They want to be the most valuable thing that there is. And this is a very interesting crossover into how eights experience the same thing. The nuance, we shifted a little bit. We want to be the best, the strongest, and absolutely the most valuable. We understand ourselves to be the secret weapon. And that positioning makes us the most important and the most powerful elements that there are in the room. When eights are not self conscious to this, then it actually is generally true. But when eights start disintegrating and get into stress response, we become self conscious to the fact that this is what we desire and we want to be. And then, therefore, are efforting trying to be something that we already are, which is what causes the paradox, which we end up doing the opposite. But for the sake of this disintegration point, eights when we overly prioritize ourselves in a way that the core of it is this two thing where we want to be the best and the most valuable. It's a disintegration point for the kind of pride that you spoke to around twos. Absolutely. This is the place of pride.
All right, now let's talk about the very best of the two and how eights move there in growth.
Twos sit at the center of grace, sit at the center of generosity, and teach us that love is everything, not one thing. Twos teach the power of mercy and compassion and healing and how to understand and support and sacrifice for other in a way that is not detached from self. Like twos are the ultimate healers. They're the ones that are present in people's pain and can defer their own needs in a moment of crisis in order to meet the most important thing as it presents itself. Twos are the ultimate place of nurturing, where they're a place of comfort and support and a deep intelligence of the heart. And so it's absolutely clear here that eights at their best that have a certain magnanimity where there's this deep integration of love and care and generosity that's powerful. It's not soft. It's not discreet. It's something that is almost impossible. And this kind of magnanimity is about generosity and forgiveness, right? And mercy. The twos teach us how to give that which cannot be earned. And then mercy is that which people do not deserve. And so that kind of generosity and that kind of depth of personal power that can be toward someone and for others is what actually activates the whole point of being an eight. Without the intelligence and skill and mastery and focus and discipline and the quality of intelligence of the five combined with the heart of a two that is really the heart, not some fluffy version of the heart, but something that is about blood. You have these elements that actually make up the quality of passion that eights embody: the heart of the two, the mind of the five, and the body of the eight. Those are the three intelligences of humanity: is the mind, the heart, and the body. And that is where they come together for an eight in a way that actually can result in resurrection, metaphorically, and can, literally too, in terms of being able to restore and to bring life.
How does the concept of what the two brings in terms of helpfulness direct or guide that power and that energy coming from eights?
Eights engage contribution in a different way, of course, than twos do, but it is really about contribution that eights want to have impact. And the way that we want to have impact, if it's not directed by the two's understanding of other and by the two's understanding of what is actually useful and what is actually healing, what is empowering, then eights cannot get to the deeper layers of that life force. So, without being integrated to the two and the five, can have this very surface level of immediate impact that can engage in being the rescuer, sure, and can in immediate moments hit the mark and overcome. But to have any kind of lasting, sustainable, and certainly the depth of contribution to humanity and to each other requires the intelligence of the two and also the intelligence of the five.
You mentioned twos can sit in pain, and I think eights can endure a lot of pain. So, how does all of this come together?
When I speak about love, I am combating a cultural diffusing of significance around that word. I mean, I think it's something that humans intellectually understand that's powerful. However, when we speak about love in a cultural, social way, it seems to be more weak. And that irritates me as an eight. And so of course I'm going to put more power behind what is love. It's something that is incredibly formed. It's not soft in its entirety. Now, here's the truth is that love is everything. It is tender and it is soft. Absolutely. But I think that culturally, socially, we're more connected to that part. So, of course, my eight self is going to push against and bring the other side of what love is, that the two in us and all of us, and especially when eights integrate to a two, that there is tenderness and there is an ability for the heart to be affected, which is not normal for eights. Our hearts are not easily accessible unless we move to our two self, where we allow ourselves to be affected by others, where we allow ourselves to receive emotional information. And this is a place of tenderness. It's an absolute place of nurturing. It is a place of softness and it is a place of release that is incredibly important and very powerful. It doesn't lose any of it. The difference is that speaking of love in an intellectual way as a concept and how we understand it versus speaking of love, how it emerges in us, in our bodies and in our relationships. And eights need more softness. And we struggle with being permeable. We're by nature impermeable. And when we disintegrate to our five self, we become even less permeable. So twos open us up. Twos absolutely connect us to our porousness and how we do care and how caring and nurturing we actually are.
As a two who integrates to eight, I know that like I'm naturally soft and agreeable and permeable. And so you and I have talked a lot about how there's this badass kind of power and strength and force in the love that I encompass as a two. And so we're both on opposite sides of this coin where I need the strengthening and power behind the love that I naturally have. And as an eight, you have this kind of softening and tenderness because you already have the strength part covered.
If we think of eights being an energy source that is actually tapped in, to the universe in some way, we are a power source. If that isn't held inside love and care, it's wildly dangerous. And this is how eights become so dangerous, is that they're not connected to their two self and they're not connected to the five self in the intelligence of understanding consequence and in the abilities and skills and mastery of their own power and resources. So it's really important that I think more for an eight than other types because we are so externalized, because our gifts and our core operating system is fundamentally about power.
With the mission of justice, the points of mercy and compassion are critical in rounding out or softening the edges of what justice can look like without its complementary mercy and compassion, which can be sourced from two-ness.
Yes, well, and five, because five causes us to reevaluate what is justice. The intelligence of five asks us to dig into nuance and context and distinctions that help us navigate our values. And so, without the intelligence of a five, us as an eight, what is true strength? And what we learn from our five self is that strength isn't what we think it is as eights, it's far more. And then, absolutely, the connection to our humanity, which is mercy and grace, which, by the way, is, I don't think personally, I don't think anything is more powerful than grace. I don't think that there is a more powerful source that humans can tap into besides grace. And that if you can combine grace and energy, the grace of a two, the energy of an eight, and the intelligence and mastery of a five, I don't know if there's anything more powerful in terms of a combination, which is why, it's important that we're all integrated to all nine parts of ourselves. But as an eight, it's exactly what I desire and it's exactly what I need. And without being connected to both 2 and 5, I am way less powerful.
Yeah, we started off this conversation in the previous episode about this binary thinking with black and white, life and death, for and against. And what I'm hearing is both the 5 and 2 bring a lot more of that nuance, context, gray areas in between humanity, people, all of that.
Why we have this episode for each of the types is because all of the integration and disintegration points, that what we call the points of movement, are what complete in any immediate way in terms of growth. They complete our core selves. And I find this more compelling and more powerful than digging into the wings or any other patterns. That our points of movement are what is most necessary to becoming the best parts of ourselves. And then after that, integrating into all of the rest of them.
Thanks for listening. To engage or work with us, reach out via the link in our show notes and make sure to click on the follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes.